Now, there's a few things I want to stress about the business case of fiber to the home as opposed to extensions of the copper network. The first one is we often hear there's no demand for such bandwidth, such services. We did a study for the Fiber to the Home Council Europe a few months ago where we looked in depth and interviewed 13 service providers across the world doing FTTH or FTTP. And what we see is roughly that demand for all of these players is a factor of time. In other words, it may be slow to build up, but there is no inherent issue with demand. The longer you've been in the market, the higher penetration you have. And you can see here that the players at the top here that have been here the longest have take-ups upwards of 60%, which from a business model perspective is very positive. The second thing is people are not willing to pay more for better connectivity. Well, again, that's not what we see. In normalized US dollars, we see there's a 46% differential between fiber to the home and DSL ARPUs, which means that there is more money to be made. I'm happy to offline or afterwards tell you where this extra money comes from. I had a slide in there, but I had to take it out for time reasons. So essentially where I'm coming to is I think there was an original sin of policy, and it's one that we're compounding now in many countries. The original sin was not understanding that the network and the services were different businesses and that they needed to be structurally separated. The compounded sin is to believe that the incumbents are the likely ones to invest, where in fact every incentive not to do so is currently in their DNA. And this is something we see, again, in many countries around the world where the policymakers are trying to find incentives for the incumbents to invest, despite the fact that there is absolutely no reason for them to do so. So I think that needs to change, and we need to understand that every alternative to that scenario needs to be favored. In fact, the paradox is the incumbents will invest if others are investing, because then they won't have a choice. And this is what we saw in the Lithuanian case this morning. This is what we saw in the Netherlands. It's what we saw in Portugal. As if you get a significant player coming into the market and investing in an alternative infrastructure, then the incumbent has no choice but to invest. Now, I know that there's a lot of people representing local governments here, and I just want to stress for a second the importance of this to local governments. We've heard a lot this morning about the macroeconomic impact of broadband, and that's good. It's as it should be, but I think that's only part of the story. If you're a local government, of course it's important to grow your local economy as much as you can, but you're also a user of this infrastructure. Yesterday I was at a conference in Nice on smart cities, and I am constantly astounded at how much of a silo thinking there is in this area. People think in terms of applications, so they say, okay, let's work on getting some smart grid applications in our community, or let's work on more efficient waste disposal mechanisms, or water, or whatever it is. And there's no infrastructure thinking underlying that. In other words, if they launch 3 projects, they build 3 separate infrastructures to do that. That infrastructure that we're talking about is this same infrastructure that is going to provide better broadband for your citizens. Why is this important? Because if there's a monopoly provider on the infrastructure in your community, you will not get the best prices. In fact, over time, you will probably get to a position where you will be in a captive position and the prices will increase. We're seeing this in many communities. So it's vitally important, before local governments sign a pact with whichever monopoly provider is available, it's vitally important that they ensure that their own needs are covered in a cost-effective way. And that will not just grow the economy in their area, it will also lower the costs, allow them to lower their own costs and increase the services or better the services that they offer to their citizens. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. Just as a last thought, one of the things that puzzles me a lot is that I don't see a political appropriation of these issues. What I mean by that is that essentially when you hear politicians talk about broadband, it's about economic growth a bit, and it's about all the evil pirates that are destroying our jobs and the economy. That's all it's about. But what it really is about, in my opinion, is that we have a unique opportunity here to rethink the way society has been structured. The whole urbanization of our modern societies happened because of work. And work was located in specific areas because work was a physical endeavor. It was something you had to do with your hands. That's no longer the case. In Europe, 60% of our jobs are services. They could be anywhere. And this is potentially a key to rebalancing our economies, to addressing a lot of the issues that we have around pollution, around excessive costs of rents and homes, about rural communities being depleted. All of that should be part of a vision for society. So if there's any politicians in the room still, I know there were some this morning, but some of them left, this is the appropriation that I think should happen. Thank you very much.